equal treatment. That's all I ask.
Pursuant to Florida Statute 90.6162A, D, as in Delta, a witness may not be excluded if the witness is, in a criminal case, the victim of the crime, the victim's next of kin, the parent or guardian of a minor child victim, or a lawful representative of such person, unless, upon motion, the court determines such presence to be prejudicial. Do you want to be heard on that, the last prong?
I think given the fact that they're both going to be called as witnesses, yes, I think it would be prejudicial.
State.
And Judge, that's why we're calling them first, so they can testify and get their main testimony out of the way before any of the other witnesses testify. And like I said, the only reason they would be called back is as rebuttal to if the defendant testifies. So I think we can solve the problem if the defendant chooses to testify, if we just remove them from the courtroom for that testimony.
All right, the rule is very specific. In a criminal case, the victim of the crime, the victim's next of kin, the parent or guardian of a minor child victim, or a lawful representative of such person. It's the disjunctive, not the conjunctive. So pick one. You can have the victim's next of kin or a lawful representative of such person. Pursuant to Marcy's Law and pursuant to Rule 90.616 D, I don't find that one of their presences would be overly prejudicial.
Are you kidding me? Stop. What is happening? Stop. Why won't it let me skip the ad? Skip. Good gravy, Murray. Yes, let's watch Debbie screw up her first live stream. Hey, Mountain Princess.
You're welcome to have a seat. We stand for you.
I have my important evidence
Right, you all
mug
can have a seat.
with my red
Good morning,
Solo cup.
everybody. Welcome back. I see some of you brought your jackets and some layers to be comfortable in. So now you get to sit in the nice, comfortable seats as you listen to the testimony. As you notice, those seats do turn and swivel as you need to. I do have some initial instructions before we begin. I do want to ask, though, and again, you're going to get tired of hearing this from me, because every time we separate and every time we come apart, I'm going to get some confirmation from you. So did anybody begin deliberations or talking about the case amongst yourselves? Did anybody talk about the case with anybody outside of this group? Or did anybody do any research on the people, places, things, or legal topics we've heard anything about? All right, everybody says no.
What?
Thank you very much for honoring those very important traditions. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you have been selected and sworn as the jury to try the case of the state of Florida versus Ashley Christina Benefield. This is a criminal case. Ms. Benefield is charged with murder in the second degree with a firearm. The definition of this crime will be explained to you later. The state's charging document, which is called an information, is not evidence and is not to be considered by you as any proof of guilt. It is my responsibility to explain the law to you. It is your solemn responsibility to determine if the state has proved its accusations beyond a reasonable doubt against Ms. Benefield, in accordance with the law that I will give you at the end of the case. Thus, the province of the jury and the province of the court are well defined, and they do not overlap. This is one of the fundamental principles of our system of justice. Before proceeding further, it will be helpful if you understand how a trial is conducted. At the beginning of the trial, the attorneys will have an opportunity, if they wish, to make an opening statement. The opening statement gives the attorneys a chance to tell you what evidence they believe will be presented during the trial. What the lawyers say is not evidence, and you are not to consider it as evidence. Following the opening statements, witnesses will be called to testify under oath. They will be examined and cross-examined by the attorneys. Documents and other exhibits also may be produced as evidence. After the evidence has been presented, the court will give you the initial instructions on the law. The attorneys will then have an opportunity, if they wish, to make closing arguments to you. Following the closing arguments by the attorneys, the court will conclude by giving you the final jury instructions. After the final instructions are given, you will then retire to the jury room to consider your verdict. You should not form any definite or fixed opinion on the merits of the case until you have heard all of the evidence, the argument of the lawyers, and the instructions on the law by me. Until that time, you should not discuss the case amongst yourselves. Your verdict must be based solely on the evidence or the lack of evidence and the law. I now instruct you not to communicate with anyone, including your fellow jurors, about this case. No communication includes no emailing, text messaging, tweeting, blogging, or any other form of communication. Do not research about the case or look up any information about the case. If you become aware of any violation of any of these rules at all, notify court personnel, one of the deputies, or myself of that violation. During the trial, the court may take recesses and you will be permitted to go about your personal affairs. During these recesses, you must not discuss the case with anyone, nor permit anyone to say anything to you or in your presence about this case. If anyone attempts to say anything to you or in your presence about this case, tell him or her that you are on the jury trying the case and ask that person to stop. If he or she persists,
She
leave
looks
that
nervous.
person at once, and you are to immediately report that matter to the court deputies who will advise me. You cannot use any cell phones, tablets, laptops, or other electronic devices in this courtroom. If you have an electronic device with you, please turn it off or silence it while we are in court. You may use these devices throughout the trial and during recesses, but even if then, you may not use your cell phone or electronic device to find out any information about the case or communicate with anyone about the case or the people and places involved in the case. Do not take photographs, video recordings, or audio recordings of the proceedings or your fellow jurors. At the end of the case, while you are deliberating, you must not communicate with anyone outside of the jury room. If someone needs to contact you in an emergency, the court will receive messages and deliver them to you without delay. I previously gave you my business card, which has my judicial assistant's direct line. If someone needs to contact you in an emergency, my judicial assistant will notify the clerk or myself, and then we'll handle the situation as necessary. Is everybody able to give that information to whoever may need it? All right. If not, make sure you do so. This case must be tried by you only on the evidence presented during the trial, in your presence, and in the presence of the defendant, the attorneys, and myself. Jurors must not conduct any investigation of their own. This includes reading newspapers, watching television, or using a computer, cell phone, the internet, any electronic device, or any other means at all to get information related to this case or or the people and places involved in this case. This applies whether you are in the courthouse, at home, or anywhere else. You must not visit places mentioned in the trial or use the internet to look at maps or pictures to see any places or people discussed during the trial. Jurors must not have discussions of any sort with friends or family members about the case or the people and places involved in the case. Do not let even the closest family members make comments to you or ask questions about the trial. As I said yesterday, make me the bad guy and tell them you are under very strict orders from the court. You can't talk about it. You can't hear about it. You can't discuss it until this case is over and you're released from your obligations. In this age of electronic communication, I want to stress again that just as you must not talk about this case face to face, you must not talk about or communicate about this case using phones, computers, or other electronic devices. Do not send or accept any messages related to this case or your jury service. Do not discuss this case or ask for advice by any means at all, including posting information on an internet website, chat room, or blog. What are the reasons for these rules? These rules are imposed because jurors must decide the case without distraction and only on the evidence presented in this courtroom. If you investigate, research, or make inquiries on your own, I have no way to make sure that the information you obtain is proper for this case. Likewise, the parties have no opportunity to dispute or challenge the accuracy of what you find. This is contrary to our judicial system, which guarantees every party the right to ask questions about and challenge the evidence being considered against it and to present argument with respect to that evidence. Any independent investigation by a juror unfairly and improperly prevents the parties from having these opportunities that our judicial system guarantees. Any juror who violates these restrictions jeopardizes the fairness of these proceedings, and a mistrial could result that would require the entire trial process to start over. A mistrial is a tremendous expense and inconvenience to the parties, the court, and the taxpayers. If you violate these rules, you may be held in contempt of court and face sanctions such as serving time in jail, paying a fine, or both. In every criminal proceeding, a defendant has the absolute right to remain silent. At no time is it the duty of a defendant to prove her innocence. From the exercise of a defendant's right to remain silent, a jury is not permitted to draw any inference of guilt, and the fact that a defendant did not take the witness stand must not influence your verdict in any manner whatsoever. The attorneys are trained in the rules of evidence and trial procedure, and it is their duty to make all objections they feel are proper. When an objection is made, you should not guess or speculate on the reason why it has been made. Likewise, if I sustain or uphold an objection, you must not guess or speculate on what might have occurred had the objection not been sustained, nor what a witness might have said had he or she been permitted to answer. During the trial, it may be necessary to confer with the attorneys out of your hearing to discuss matters that require consideration by me alone. It is impossible to predict when such a conference may be required or how long it will last. When such conferences occur, they will be conducted so as to consume as little of your time as is necessary for a fair and orderly trial of the case. Many times these conferences will occur at my bench, where the attorneys will approach, we'll have a conversation, and it'll be done. But sometimes the matters that we need to discuss more in depth, it's just much easier if I excuse you back to the jury room. The attorneys stay at their desk where they have all their materials, and we have more of a normal conversation. So either way that it happens, please rest assured that we will address those matters as quickly as possible in order to have that fair and orderly trial of the case. You are permitted to take notes during the trial, and you have been provided with a notepad and a pen for use to take those notes. Any notes that you take will be for your own personal use. However, you should not take them with you from the courtroom. During recesses, the court deputy will take possession of your notes and will return them to you when we reconvene. After you have completed all of your deliberations and you are discharged, the court deputy will deliver your notes to me. They will be destroyed.
Oh. Dang it. What?
Destroyed. No one will ever read your notes. If you take notes, do not get so involved with note taking that you become distracted from the proceedings. Your notes should only be used as aids to your memory.
What?
Whether or not you take notes, you should rely on your memory of the evidence, and you should not be unduly influenced by the notes of
Dang
other
it.
jurors.
I didn't know I paused
Notes
it.
are not entitled to any greater weight than each juror's memory of the evidence.
I did not
Before I go
mean to
too
pause it.
far, I see you all have your pads. If you haven't already taken the cap off, test the pen.
Sorry.
Just make sure it works. All right, everybody's good. Now, if you are a prodigious note taker like I am and you run out of paper, let us know. We've got boxes and boxes of paper for you if you need them. And if your pen starts running out, just hold it up, shake it for us, let us know. We'll get you know them. We got boxes of them. All right. Oh, also, I don't have them right here. If at any point during the trial you have a difficult time hearing someone, maybe it's soft spoken, maybe they're far away, whatever it might be. If you have any difficulty hearing, just give one of the deputies the universal sign. Remember the old Carol Burnett? Anybody?
Yeah.
Okay, a couple. Give the universal sign, and we can get you those headphones. Like I said, they're piped into all of these microphones and makes it really easy to hear. It'll help a lot. Also, some trials we have, they're
And she would stop at nothing to attend.
What?
This case is about a woman who very early on in her pregnancy decided she wanted to be a single mother. And she did not want the father of this child to have any visitation, her husband. And everything she did from that point on was to attain that goal. And she would stop at nothing to attain that goal. She tried several things in the system that you'll hear. The courts, law enforcement, Department of Children and Families, no one got on her side. And at the end, when there was no other option, she shoots him and kills him and claims self-defense. Now, this couple, Doug Benefield and Ashley Benefield, were married. They had moved to Florida from South Carolina. They lived together in South Carolina. Now, when they lived down here in Florida, in Bradenton, they did not live together. Obviously, there were issues. Doug Benefield lived in his own apartment. Ashley Benefield lived with her mother, Alicia Byers, in a home with their daughter once she gave birth. She had this daughter who at the time was a toddler when she shot Doug. While they were living separate, they were still interacting with each other with the goal, the apparent goal of seeking reconciliation, reconciling this family and becoming a family. They were going to restaurants. They were going to Selby Gardens. They were hanging out at the pool at Doug Benefield's apartment complex. By all images, they looked like they were trying to reconcile. The problem was that is not what Ashley Benefield wanted. Although that's what she was portraying, that's not what she wanted. At the time that this shooting happened, they were planning to move to Maryland. Ashley's mother had inherited a home in Maryland, and they were going to move to Maryland. Doug was also going to move to Maryland. They were going to continue to live separate and continue to attempt to reconcile, but they were all going to move to Maryland together. Excuse me. At the time that this happened, everybody was in moving mode. There were boxes everywhere, furniture, beds upended. They had a U-Haul that they were using together. They had a pod that was in the defendant's driveway that they were putting all of their things into. And every day around this time, Doug Benefield was going to Ashley's home to assist her in putting these things into the pod, putting these things into the U-Haul, because the plan was that they were all going to pack up in the next few days and move to Maryland. And it continued to try and work on their relationship. The problem was Ashley Benefield knew that this was a ruse. She didn't intend to reconcile. She didn't intend to try to make this work. And the problem was there was a court hearing on September 30th of 2020. And at that court hearing, all of this was going to come out. It was going to come out that she was acting one way when she was by herself, and she was acting another way when she was with Doug Benefield. That she was telling him she wanted to work on things, that she wanted to get this marriage back together. But yet when separate, she was saying she had absolutely no intention of reconciling, did not want him around, and did not want this to work. On the 30th of September, this was going to come out. On the 27th of September, she shoots him and kills him. 3 days before this hearing and 3 days before this information was to become public. Now, there was no one else at the house at the time of the shooting. It was just Doug and Ashley. While Ashley's mother and child lived there, they had gone to the park. As soon as Doug got to the house, Alicia Byers takes her granddaughter and they go to the park. So the only people at the house are the defendant and the victim. And you're going to hear three very important things about this shooting. Number one, Ashley Benefield was the only person that was armed. It was her gun. She had it from before. It's not like she took it away from Doug. It was her gun. And Doug Benefield was not armed. He had no gun, no knife, no club, no weapon of any kind. Number two, Ashley Benefield was not injured. Law enforcement took pictures of her right after the shooting. And then again, you'll hear in a few days, they took more pictures. Because sometimes law enforcement, they know that bruises sometimes don't show up right away, that it takes several days for these bruises to show up. So they took pictures several days later. And you'll see those pictures and you'll see that Ashley Benefield is not injured. She has some very superficial scratches on her midsection. Who knows where they came from? She had cats in the house, but who knows? But this is the only injury to her. And the third thing is the trajectory of the fatal bullet. Now, he was shot multiple times, but one of the bullets was fatal. The trajectory of that bullet was side to side. It was not straight on. Doug Benefield was not facing her, coming at her at the time that the fatal shot was fired. Now, as you go through this trial, it's a lot of information, a lot of timeline, but it's all very important to understand the tenor of this relationship between these two people. And it goes all the way back to when they met, back in 2016. That was the end of August 2016, they meet. They were both involved in some political event and they met. 13 days later, they married. Doug Benefield was 54 years old. Ashley Benefield was 24 years old. So there was a 30-year age gap between the two of them. They knew each other 13 days and they got married. Ashley Benefield was very into the ballet, had been an ex-dancer. Her dream was to start a ballet company. And lo and behold, her husband has the money and the connections to get this done. So he begins and she begins to put this ballet company together. And they do put a ballet company together. But before it can actually take off, it falls apart. Before they're married even a whole year, so in April of 2017, Doug Benefield has his vasectomy reversed because they want a child. Within weeks or months of the vasectomy reversal, the defendant is pregnant. So all within a year of being married, they have done a vasectomy reversal, gotten pregnant, started a ballet, and the ballet has crumbled. While Ashley is pregnant, she decides she's too sick from the pregnancy, morning sickness, and that she needs her mother to take care of her. Her mother's in Florida, in Bradenton, Florida. So during her pregnancy, she moves to Bradenton, Florida to live with her mother so her mother can take care of her during the sickness. The two never lived together again. This was the last time these two lived together. They continued a long-distance relationship when she first moved to Florida and continued trying to keep it together in communication. But about the same time as the ballet collapses, right about all of this time, Ashley Benefield starts complaints against the victim. Her complaints are things like, the main one was that Doug Benefield was poisoning her with heavy metals, and her unborn child was being poisoned, that there was poison in her tea, that he was giving her poison. There were also other complaints, domestic violence complaints, different types of complaints, but not once will you hear that she ever said he hit her, Not once did she ever say he choked her, kicked her, anything like that. Even though she's making these complaints, the victim, Doug Benefield, is still trying to make this work. And you're going to see some text messages and hear some things. He's still trying to make this work. But she is having none of it. So at about the time that she's ready to give birth, Doug Benefield contacts an attorney here in Florida, Sarasota, Florida, Stephanie Murphy, and asks her to help. And asks her to help him write a letter to her, to Ashley Benefield, to state that he wants to be a part of the birth and he wants to be a part of this child's life and to please keep in contact with him. Ashley never answers that letter. That letter is sent via email on March 15th of 2018, which was several weeks early. She wasn't due yet. And the next day, she is induced. Her pregnancy is induced and she gives birth to a daughter. She never tells Doug. He doesn't even know his child is born for weeks. And she never responds to the letter. The way that Doug knows that this child is born is that Ashley Benefield starts filing complaints again. And based on these complaints, he figures out, oh, my child's born. And now we have more complaints. The complaints revolved around the poisoning and the things that I talked about earlier. And she filed for what's called a violation of injunction, or I'm sorry, she filed for an injunction. An injunction is our legal way of saying restraining order. So when someone wants a restraining order, they have to go through a process and go to court, and the court has to decide, and you get a restraining order. So that was her process. She was trying to get a restraining order against Doug, and the allegations were what I said to you. At the same time, Doug Benefield had not seen his child, had not met his child. So he did a cross complaint to say, please let me have contact with my child. I've never even met my child. So this was set for a hearing. And it ended up going 2 days. It was long. It was a long process, a lot of witnesses in family court. And it ended up going 2 days. It began in July 30th, 2018, and it finished on September 17th, 2018. And at the conclusion of that hearing, the judge said, no. No, you are not getting a restraining order, and no, you cannot keep this man away from his child. And granted Doug Benefield immediate visitation with his daughter. He met his daughter for the first time. She was 6 months old. And at the time when they were exchanging custody, which was at the sheriff's office for meeting the child, all of this animus had been going on. I mean, they had just had these hearings and all of this. And at that first time sharing, that's what they call it nowadays in family courts, time sharing. At the first time sharing, Ashley starts becoming very nice to Doug and says, basically, I'll go with you for the visitation. And that's what they do. The family goes off for visitation. And that begins approximately a year, of basically them working on the relationship, going out to restaurants, doing things, hanging out together as a family. About a year. Now, Doug never moves in with Ashley. He keeps a separate residence. But after August of 2018, Ashley just stops talking to him. And that time, Doug files.
Oh, what is happening to the sound?
Is that the defendant started off with 5 different complaints, all revolving not around her this time, but about the child. Because it's visitation with the child. So now these using the child. Are that Doug's abusing the child. What you'll hear is that not one of these charges was ever prosecuted. Not one of these ever left law enforcement. And now has tried these 5 cases. After Doug filed for a divorce, law enforcement's not helping her. See this still
Why
This
is the
tape going.
audio breaking up? Is the audio breaking up? Or is that just me?
meeting of all these people, Benefield logical evaluation. So they go to doctor, and Dr. Broder does a very extensive evaluation. Separately, he meets with the child. She's a little girl, and at the time of this, she's about not yet 2 years old. During this evaluation, and what you'll hear from Dr. Broder is that Ashley Benefield acted very different when she was with Doug and when she was not with Doug. When she was with Doug, it was, we're moving to Maryland, we're going to work on our relationship, try and make this family work. When she's not with Doug, she's saying, no, how I do not want that. I want to reconcile with him. And to Doug's knowledge, all he's hearing is I want to reconcile. So that's what he knows. Was coming out on 30th. September 30th, 2020, Ashley knew the ruse was up. Now, there had to be a request from both sides, the husband and the wife, this psychological report. And at one point before the hearing, Ashley Benefield tried to get Doug to drop that so the report would not get out, would not be released. Doug refused. So that report was coming out on the 30th, and on the 27th, she kills him and claims self-defense. Now, you're probably going to hear a lot of information about Doug Benefield. Probably some negative things, not so nice things. I would just ask you to remember who and why. Just because someone speaks words does not make it true. So use your common sense as you go through this trial. This is a long story with a lot of information, but you'll see that this was a custody battle, that this mother was going to win at all costs. And the cost was the life of Doug Benefield. And that is murder. Thank you.
Mr. Taylor.
That was a good opening. It was nice and not a lot, like not too much information and short. Like you got the gist of everything in a short, compact little opening there. Here we go. This guy is so slow. He speaks so slow. What are we waiting on, dude? Oh, we have visual aids, I guess, because the lights are down. What is happening?
This is the divide between generations. I'm
Oh
in
my
the old
God.
school. I'd like to know that I have a picture and it's reliable. This is the new world. You rely on technology. I'm not sure that I'm a fan.
Oh my God. Huh. Okay then.
All right, here we go. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Douglas Benefield. He was 58 when Ashley Benefield was forced to shoot him. Can I see the second picture, please? I want you to note how he's built for a 58-year-old man. Now, despite being raised by a family who taught me that it was ill to speak about the dead in an unflattering sense, I'm going to have some strong words about Douglas Benefield, the alleged victim in this case. I say alleged victim because he was anything but that. The evidence is going to show that Douglas Benefield was a very disturbed man. Of that, I assure you, you'll have no doubt when the case is over. 30 years older than Ashley, he was obsessed with her, and he successfully portrayed himself as everything he was not in an effort to win her hand in marriage.
After
Despite
13 days?
promoting himself as a religious and decent human being,
He is
Doug Benefield was a
very
manipulative,
seductive.
cunning, and abusive man. Absolutely insisted on control. Among other things, you're going to learn during this trial that over the course of this 4-year relationship, Douglas Benefield did the following. He fired a handgun into the ceiling of their kitchen on an occasion to stop Ashley from talking. He threw a loaded gun at Ashley. He punched Doug in the face so hard that he knocked the dog unconscious. He regularly carried a concealed firearm that was racked, meaning pulled back and ready to fire. He unlawfully placed a tracker on Ashley Benefield's vehicle. He was regularly observed following Ashley Benefield in her car, driving in Manatee and Sarasota counties, despite the fact that he was living in South Carolina, having driven all the way just to tail her. He was caught by a neighbor at night, standing in the neighbor's backyard in an effort to peer into Ashley's house. He punched numerous holes in the drywall of their home when they lived together in South Carolina. And he had a previous marital history of domestic violence. Ashley Benefield was painfully aware of all of this on September 27th, 2020, the day of the homicide. And I want to assure you that this is not going to come to you from just one place. These are acts that were admitted by Douglas Benefield himself. Ashley Benefield feared him. That was no secret, ladies and gentlemen. She left him a letter when she moved out 3 years prior to the homicide, detailing how scared she was of him because of all of these acts. She feared for herself and for her unborn child. 3 years before the shooting. She left him. He pursued her. She rejected him. He would not take no for an answer. She at times despised him. He did not care. She moved to get away from him. He followed her. She decided to go to Maryland. Surprise. He decided to go to Maryland as well. She belonged to him. He had the right to be with her, and no less than God decided that to be the case. Doug Benefield viewed Ashley Benefield as his property. Abusers seek to control their victims, to dominate them. At times, the pressure that Doug Benefield exerted and brought to bear upon Ashley Benefield was so overwhelming that it sometimes triggered questionable suspicions in Ashley's dedicated effort to protect herself and her child. Domestic violence victims have several things in common. Number one, they initially believe things will get better. Instead, they get worse. Number two, domestic violence victims develop a get along, go along attitude. It's the mentality because appeasement keeps the beast at bay. Just do what he wants and you'll be safe. These domestic violence victims constantly speak about walking on eggshells. And the reason they describe it like that is for fear of anything that they say may trigger a reprisal by the abuser. And if children are involved, everything is magnified. They become hyper vigilant. Ashley Benefield developed all of those characteristics. So on 9/27/2020, the day of the homicide, Doug arrives at the residence of Ashley Benefield. And as you heard, they are living separately. He does not live there. He never resided there. This is at her home in Bradenton. He had no claim for entering that home on that day, except with the permission of Ashley, which she gave on that day because she was moving to Maryland and Doug was going to Maryland as well. But he knew, make no mistake, as the prosecutor has told you, Doug Benefield knew full well on that day that this relationship was over. They were not going to be living together. Maybe, hopefully, they could work out some type of co-parenting agreement, but she was done. So how does that day's events unfold? What happens that results in us all assembling here this morning? It starts, ladies and gentlemen, with Doug Benefield once again seeking control. He is simmering when he arrives at Ashley's home on that morning, that afternoon. Why is he simmering? He's on a slow boil, actually, because he knows that Ashley's moving. He knows that this relationship is over. And immediately there's a discussion about how they should pack the belongings, with Ashley taking the position that her belongings should be packed last. Why? Because Ashley's things are going to be unloaded first. And Doug will then continue on to wherever it is that he was going to reside. So, this is the most vulnerable time for a domestic violence victim, when the abuser recognizes that he's about to lose her. So what's his response to this? All right, classic tactics of an abuser, they are threats and intimidation on this afternoon as the two of them are trying to pack this U-Haul and this pod. In an effort to avoid confrontation with him, Ashley says, after a short while, gee, I'm really pretty exhausted. Why don't we stop for the day? We can finish tomorrow. Doug ignores it. His response is to grow increasingly aggressive and hostile. Not once, but twice, Doug body checks Ashley. And by body check, I mean he passes her in a hallway, slams his shoulder into her shoulder, almost knocking her over. That's not enough. The next thing is, as they're passing in a hallway, he's carrying a cardboard box. He jams the cardboard box into Ashley's side, which leaves scratches that the police photographer took. Again, now fearing for her safety because she sees how he is escalating in his behavior, she tries to persuade him, look, let's finish for the day. It's getting late. I'm tired. No go. Instead, Doug bellows, I know what you're doing. You're trying to get me to leave. I'm your husband, and I can spend the night if I want to. Well, that was enough for Ashley. She heads for the front door of the house to leave. Doug chases up to her, grabs her by the arm or hand, and spins her around so that his back is to the front door, blocking her from leaving. And he yells right in her face, where do you think you're going? Ashley, desperate at this point, Doug yells, you can't leave me. Ashley somehow finds the strength to summon up the nerve to say, I am done. You need to leave now. She commands him to leave the home. Terrified while in his grasp because he spun her around, his response is to smack her upside the head. And you'll see the pictures of her swollen face and her eye. And he yells, I am not done. Fearing for her life, as this was the first time that he had actually struck her. Up till then, it was always threats and intimidation.
I can't tell you how many of these I have, all these different colors. I was someone who always
Yells, I am not done. Fearing for her life, as this was the first time that he had actually struck her. Up till then, it was always threats and intimidation. As intimidating as firing a gun may be to get you to stop speaking, he had never actually hit her. He pushed her. This time he struck her. Terrified after this, fearing for her life, she heads for her bedroom where she has a firearm. She gets to the firearm. She turns around. She orders Doug to stop. When she looks up, he's in the doorway. Instead of seeing the gun and leaving, Doug gets into this warrior pose with his arms moving purposely and advances. At that point, petrified, she fires, believing that if he gets a hold of her, she will be either seriously injured or killed. To her horror, after firing, he continues to advance. She absolutely panics. She tries to get away and backs to the side to create more distance between them, but there is no place left for her to go in this small bedroom. At that point, in utter panic, she keeps firing the gun. She sees Doug's legs go up in the air, almost as if he was running and slipped, and he falls backwards. Instinctively, she flees the house and heads next door to John Sant's house. He's a neighbor. When all is said and done, ladies and gentlemen, and the testimony and the evidence is complete, the only thing that's going to have been established here beyond a reasonable doubt is that Douglas Benefield was a violent abuser. Ashley Benefield's efforts to placate him was absolutely consistent with what abused women do, especially when a child is involved, and that Ashley's result and resource to deadly force was absolutely justified under the circumstances. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Judge, can we approach?
Yes. Are we done for this, for the presentation for now?
Yes.
Yes.
My microphone just turned green and I've never seen it green before, so I don't know what it's doing. I hope you can hear me. It's red when it's muted, so I know it's not muted, but I don't know why it just turned green. So, how is he violent if he's only ever hit her once? All the other stalking type behavior, if it's true, I don't consider that violent. So if he just hit her the one time, how is that violent? Not violent. It's creepy if he was doing all the stalking
All right,
stuff.
Steve, call your first witness.
Tommy Benefield.
I caught up to live, so unfortunately I can't speed him up anymore. He sounds normal when you put him on 1.5. He's very slow. And I always say that Floridians talk slow, but that dude is like super slow. And his first thing he started right in with was complaining about the tech. He's going to do that the whole trial. That's like his mantra. I'm old and I don't like tech.
All right, members of the jury, there may be times where it may be a minute or two when witnesses are coming in or we're reconfiguring the courtroom. You're going to spend a lot of time sitting during this trial, so if you want, during these breaks, if you want to stand up, please feel free to do so, kind of stretch a little bit. There's not enough room for yoga poses and calisthenics, but sometimes it just helps to stand up on your feet and move your back a little bit. Please feel free to do that if you need to. Yes, go ahead. I do. Sorry, follow me, please. Hello, sir. Judge. My name is Judge Swan. I'm going to be presiding over this case. Take yourself a chair. Get about 12 to 15 inches from that microphone. It adjusts up, down, left, right, however you need it. Speak in a loud, clear voice. We'll hear you.
Good morning.
Good morning, Suzanne.
Please state your name.
Tommy Douglas Benefield Jr.
Can you spell those?
Yes, ma'am. Tommie. Middle name Douglas, Douglas. Last name Benefield, Beefield, and Jr.
And what was your relationship to Doug?
I'm Doug's first.
How close are you, Doug?
Doug and I were completely attached, connected all the way through his adult life at varying times, semi-annually, certainly quarterly, though the whole entire adult life.
Okay. And how are you employed?
I'm currently in
I don't know what's going on with the sound.
and I run a flight school in Vero Beach, Florida, twice a week, full-time job.
Okay. And
Yes, put me into the Navy. I was a Navy pilot off air, and Doug stayed with me in the months prior to him going into the Navy. He went through aviation officer candidate school, went through flight school, and then flew for 3 years and 2 deployments off aircraft carriers like I did. Same aircraft carrier, USS Nimitz, as a matter of fact.
okay. How old was Doug Benefield when he died?
All right, he was 5 years younger than me. I'm 68 now. That was 4 years ago, 64. He was 59, I believe.
About how tall was Doug?
5'9", 5'10" at the most.
Okay. Approximately how much did he weigh at the time?
My guess is 160, 165. He was slender and fairly small for a man.
Okay. And before Doug moved to Florida, where did he live?
Before he moved.
Before he moved down here to Bradenton, Florida, where did he live?
Okay,
before
I'm
that?
sorry. I had to pick a year at that point. I'm sorry. He had a home all the way up until his death in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, just north of Charleston. 701 Preservation Place was the address.
Okay. And he lived at that address before moving to Bradenton, Florida, correct?
Yes, ma'am. And then he rented the house out when he moved to Bradenton for visitation of their daughter.
Okay.
The house, multiple years, Doug, his way. That's
What is happening?
died of a undiagnosed heart ailment, cardiac arrest.
Okay. Is
Hold on.
oh,
Not qualified.
Lack of qualifications?
Yes.
Overruled on that basis.
was Renee Eva Benefield's mother?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And I'm sorry, can you say that date again? Was 2015 that she died?
I believe it's December 2nd, but I may have the day off, but not the month of 2015.
2015. And I want to ask you now, I'll switch to Ashley. So about how long after Renee died did Doug meet Ashley?
9 months.
When did you first meet Ashley?
I met Ashley in the spring of 2017. I believe the date was either March 14th or April 14th.
And did you know about Ashley before you met her?
No, ma'am.
Okay. How did your meeting come about?
I was flying for Southwest Airlines as a captain at the time. They changed my schedule like they do many times in the airline world. And I ended up not overnighting in Baltimore, Maryland, and they sent me to Charleston, South Carolina. Because I was going to Charleston, I texted Doug and said, hey, I'll be in to Charleston tonight. I'd like to have dinner. And he said, great. Text.
Sustained.
During your conversations, did he mention the name Ashley?
In the second text chain, which is entered.
Sustained.
I'm asking because
I can answer the question, ma'am. When I arrived in Charleston, I texted Doug, and his text to me specifically was,
you can't speak about what Doug said to you,
okay,
but during the text messages, did he indicate to you there was a female involved?
yes, that's the first mention of Ashley to me, that we were not going to have dinner at the airport, and that I was to take Uber up to Mount Pleasant to meet them.
Okay. And was that at their house?
That was at Doug's house. Yes, ma'am. 701 Preservation Place.
Doug's house at the time. And how long were you with them, the two of them together?
4 to 5 hours. We started at the house. We ended up going back to my hotel, getting a piece of medical technology, medical device that was a master trainer in that device. We had dinner together at a pizza restaurant across from the hotel, and then went back to my room in the hotel, the three of us, and certainly 4 to 5 hours that day.
And during this time, did you have multiple conversations with both of them?
We had conversations about everything, especially about how they met,
Okay.
starting at the house, ending at the hotel.
And what did Ashley say about how they met?
She talked about how they met at a political event, a meeting, where Doug and his business investors were.
Personal knowledge.
Defendant's statement.
Yeah, overruled.
You can go ahead.
Both Ashley and Doug told me about how they met the first night at a political meeting, how Ashley had reached out to him before that meeting. They showed me text messages between them for the 10 days between the first meeting and her second meeting with him up in Charleston, Mount Pleasant. They talked about how they had mutual interests, mutual alignment, how they were looking for the same thing in a relationship. They talked about, Ashley talked specifically about her fibromyalgia and pain associated with her ballet dancing days. Ashley talked about her mother, her upbringing, about her father, about the separation there.
Okay.
Do you have an objection
Yes, sir.
on the basis?
Hearsay.
It's my
defendant's
understanding this is the defendant's statement.
statement. Yes.
All right, overruled.
Let me stop you there. So she said that her and Doug met at a political event.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And at the time that you were meeting with them, were they married?
Yes, ma'am.
Did Ashley indicate to you when they got married or how long they had been married?
Yes, ma'am. 13 days from first meeting.
That they got married 13 days after they met.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did Ashley indicate where they got married?
Yes, ma'am.
And where was that?
That was in Mount Pleasant or Charleston. Doug's best friend at the time, Tripp, married them.
Okay. Did Ashley ever discuss with you that she carried a gun?
Yes.
And what did she say about that?
She said that on their initial meeting, in the political meeting, that she and Doug's traveling partner in business went outside of Secret Service people, and she showed him the gun she was carrying at that event in her bra.
And she talked to you about this during your meeting.
Yes, ma'am.
What?
Now,
Oh
I
my
wanna go
God.
forward a little bit, but did you have any conversations that night about them wanting to have a child? Or was that a different time?
I don't remember us talking about it that first night. No, ma'am.
Okay. Do you remember a conversation with Doug and Ashley, specifically Ashley, about them wanting a child?
I believe it was later in the late spring, the next time that I visited with them.
Okay. And to your knowledge, could Doug have children?
He had a vasectomy after having his daughter with Renee, his longtime wife.
Did Ashley?
I'm sorry, so no, he
Okay.
couldn't have children.
Did Ashley speak about that in front of you, Ashley and Doug together, or Ashley separate about the vasectomy?
They did when they were discussing having Doug have a vasectomy reversal. Yes, ma'am, I believe so.
And to your knowledge, did that reversal ultimately go through?
Yes, ma'am, and I believe Ashley actually paid for it on a credit card. They talked about that.
Okay. And ultimately, she became pregnant.
Yes, 3 months after the vasectomy was reversal, she became pregnant. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did they end up, I'm going to skip a little bit forward now.
Yes, ma'am.
Did they end up having a wedding reception?
They did. I believe it was June of 2017. I was single parenting at the time, and I wasn't able to attend, but it was in Charleston, South Carolina, at the home of one of Doug's business partners.
Okay. You mentioned something about ballet dancing, so I'm going to ask you about that. In your meetings and discussions with Ashley, did she indicate she was interested in the ballet?
She spoke about the fact that she had been a ballet dancer, that she had performed in, I'll call them shows, back, I believe, in Maryland, where she grew up. And by the time that I first met Ashley, they had formed the ballet company called the American National Ballet in Charleston. And they were, at the time that I first met her, they were working on getting that ballet company up and running.
Okay. And was this going to be a large endeavor?
Several $1 million. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Up to 40 dancers were hired. Yes, ma'am. Large endeavor.
Okay. And do you know what Doug's role was in that? In your discussions with Ashley, did you find out what Doug's role was?
Yeah, Doug and Ashley talked about it on the first night I met her, about how they founded the ballet, how Doug did the online limited liability corporation work, founded the name, resurrected that name, how they worked together to try to build a ballet diverse and open to more than body size, body color.
And how did?
A number of Doug's partners and Doug himself invested money. They had a major, let's say, arts benefactor in Charleston, is a personal injury lawyer who was going to be the primary major donor. In Doug's case, Doug was working on very advanced technologies and patents at the time. And in his case, he didn't have any savings or cash in the bank. So he sold his future stock grants and options to other investors to put his own money in, about $100,000 in his case.
So while this ballet was in development or launching,
I didn't know that there were bra holsters. I was just imagining like a gun in her bra. That's why I freaked out, because I didn't know. So there's actually like holsters that go in your bra. That's just insane to me. And I'm not anti-gun. Like, I don't do the gun thing. So I don't have a problem with that. But I was just imagining a gun in a bra. That's why I was like, what?
Ashley ultimately become pregnant? I know you said she became pregnant several months later, but I'm just trying to get a timeline.
Yes, ma'am. So in February of 2017 are the records and what they told me about founding it. I met her in maybe a month or two after that on that Charleston overnight. They held the first ballet event, and I was invited in May of 2017. Once again,
That's
single parent, I
cool.
wasn't able to attend.
That is actually
She got
cool.
pregnant in July, and we talked about that multiple times. And the next month in August was the large launch, which me, my business partners, my veteran friends, supporters of Doug all went to Charleston for that major launch in August. It was at a place, I'm sorry.
And at that time, was Ashley pregnant in August?
She was pregnant. I don't remember if she knew or not. It was
Okay.
1 month after the pregnancy was Emerson was conceived.
And at some point, did Ashley move away from the South Carolina home?
Yes, ma'am. We had the August ballet big launch. 2 weeks later, Doug moved Ashley down to Ashley's mother's home in Lakewood Ranch. Drove down one day, dropped her off, and drove back the next day. That's late August.
And what was the understanding? What was Ashley's understanding of why she was moving and what was going on?
In text conversations and personal conversations with Ashley.
Defendant's statement.
It's going to be the defendant's statements.
Can we approach her?
Yes.
Sorry, I can't zoom through this because I was too nervous about getting this thing up and going correctly to delay enough to be able to zoom through sidebars and stuff. Oh, that's cool. I could share the pictures if I could get into X on my computer. I don't know why. If I try to open up X on the computer, it tells me my account is suspended. It is not. Oh, wow. That's cool. I have a gun. It was my mom's. So, like, I inherited it, but I've never even shot a gun. And I think that stems from when I was a kid. Like, we never had like a gun cabinet or anything. They were hidden around our house. And from the time I was old enough to know what a gun was, I was taught you don't touch a gun. And Dad would come home from lunch and lay his gun belt out across the bed. And I was told, you don't touch that. And I knew that the good guys had guns. So guns weren't a bad thing. And I wasn't allowed to touch it because it was dangerous. So when I was 18, I worked at a store.
It was just this very simple thing of like,
apparently,
okay, is my
So when I was 18, I worked at a store that got robbed, and I saw a gun used by the bad guys for the first time, and it freaked me out so bad that I'm not anti-gun. I've never been anti-gun, but I don't want to use one. It like, I won't say it screwed up my head, but like, guns had always been a good thing to me, and then I saw a bad guy use it. So I don't know how to explain it. Like, I don't have anything to do with them. But people that want to use them, like, I have no problem with people that want to use them. And like I said, I have one. I just don't ever use it. I don't know how to load it. I don't even know if it's a revolver or has a magazine or or whatever that thing's called. Is it called a magazine? I don't know. See, I don't know. I don't know anything about guns. So, and I think my husband has a gun. But yeah. Now, when I was a kid, I shot BB guns. Me and my cousin, we would climb trees that were close to animal pens. This is horrible because it's like animal cruelty. I don't know why I did it, because I would be the last person to shoot a BB gun at an animal now. But at the bulls and the pigs, I don't know why I did it. And I don't know how I did that without getting hurt by the bull. Because we were like in the bull's pen up a tree. But so, yeah, I used to go all over. Where I live used to be our family farm. And then when my grandparents passed away, before they passed away, they like divvied up the land and assigned land to all their kids. And I'm the only one left out here, because there's a dairy out here that all the land's been sold. But we used to do all kinds of stuff. That's, as far as I can see, all
So I
this used to
believe we
belong
were
to my
talking
grandparents.
about the reason that Ashley went to Florida.
Yes, ma'am.
So in your discussions with Ashley, either text or in person or on the telephone,
Exactly.
did she indicate to you that she was going to Florida because she was sick and
That was the initial indication. Yes, ma'am.
and her mother could better take care of her?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Throughout the time that you saw Doug and Ashley together, how did Doug act?
In particular, on the opening night and all the way through their relationship. Opening night, totally in love. Both of them in love with each other. Doug was always very respectful. He was very, very respectful with her in front of me, both that initial night and then the next weekend, I believe in May, that I spent down in Sarasota, Bradenton with them. Every time he was respectful of her. They were in love. They never showed anything in front of me other than caring for each other.
That was going to be my next question. So did you see anything other than that?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions.
Cross. Mr. Taylor, as I've said before, you're free to use the podium if you prefer to cross from table.
I'm not touching it.
Morning, Mr. Benefield.
Good morning, Mr. Taylor.
You were a naval pilot, correct?
Navy pilot, yes, sir.
And I think you mentioned the training that you had briefly, correct?
I went through extensive training all my 30-year career, yes, sir.
Okay. Some of that training included close quarters combat, did it not?
No, sir, never.
No hand-to-hand
No, sir.
training at all?
No, sir.
Do you remember having a conversation where you related information about close quarters combat?
Yes, sir. I was in charge. I was the senior.
Do you remember that conversation?
Which one, sir? I don't know which
What
one.
an
you're
Close
speaking of.
quarters
answer.
combat.
If it was in perspective of me running security and self-defense training for my airline, not the Navy.
You received no such training in the Navy.
No, sir, never.
Did Doug admit to you firing the gun in the
Objection.
kitchen of their home?
Hearsay.
Can we approach?
Yes.
Why do we need to approach? That's hearsay. I appreciate Alita so much more right now because I want to fast forward through all this crap. And I don't have anything to talk about during the breaks. Unless I just tell more stories about my childhood. Oh Lord, we're doing stretching. Okay, let's stretch. We can stretch. That's what we can do. My neck is popping. Yeah, so I'm going to get another phone call. Hopefully I won't accidentally pause the stream again. Yeah, so I went to the oncologist because my neurosurgeon wanted to make sure that I was still in remission and everything was status quo with the cancer, so he could do stuff to my back. And I told my oncologist that I had an MRI scheduled, and she did not tell me that I needed to get the MRI done before the iron infusions that she said I needed because my iron was so low. And so now I am possibly going to have to wait 4 weeks to 3 months for my MRI because of the iron infusions. So I'm trying to reschedule my MRI, or hopefully they're going to tell me that no, I can still have it Thursday. But I'm waiting for them to figure it out because they don't even know. So I'm waiting for a phone call from them, and my back hurts. And I can't have my normal pain stuff because I'm supposed to get an MRI under anesthesia because I'm claustrophobic. So I can't have that because there's interactions between that and the anesthesia that could be cardiac. So I definitely don't need that. It always rains. I mean, it always pours with me. It's never just one simple thing. It's got to be everything at once with me. It's the way it's always been.
Mr. Benefield, do you recall that Ashley had left your cousin Doug
Oh,
in
Captain
the
Jack.
fall of
No.
2017?
Yes, sir.
Specifically September 18th of 2017.
Yes, sir. I'm aware of that date and the events.
Do you recall writing to Ashley Benefield in a text in May of 2018, I'm a fan of yours? It's his.
Oh, good Lord. Do they have to have a sidebar for every objection in this trial too? My dog still has a urinary tract infection, so the next step, because we've tried 2 different antibiotics, so the next step with her is to send urine to the lab. That's going to be $281, so they can figure out the right kind of antibiotic to put her on. So you've got the crap with me and you got the crap with her. It's too much. It's just too much. I know. This is going to take forever. I might start it later tomorrow, but I also didn't realize that the jury was seated, because by yesterday afternoon, I thought I heard they hadn't seated the jury yet. So I was thinking that it was going to start later, because I first set it for like 8:30 and then I changed it to 9. And then I got a little behind because I was still like fiddling with StreamYard. And then I had it all set up to go on Firefox, and it said you can't share your audio unless you're using Chrome. So then I had to download Chrome. I was like, whoa. Oh, yeah. Vets are so expensive. I was going to get pet insurance, but I had an Amazon credit card years ago that I defaulted on back when I was young and stupid. And the same bank holds the credit for the pet insurance that my vet uses, and they won't give me vet insurance now. I swear that was like 30 years ago. They still won't give me the vet insurance. Oh well. Yeah, I don't know how much money. It was weird because Belle got an ear infection and a urinary tract infection. And then Spike got an ear infection. So we paid over $200 for her. And then he started like digging at his ears and whining and stuff. And Travis was like, I think he has an ear infection too. I said, honey, ear infections are not contagious. And he's like, I know, but he's acting like he has an ear infection. And sure enough, he had an ear infection. And then he kept just whining and crying and he couldn't get comfortable anywhere. And I'm like, what is the deal? So I took him back thinking it was still his ears, and it wasn't. He was eat up with fleas. So then we had to treat the fleas. So it's like all summer with these two. It's every time I turn around, I'm taking them back to the vet for something. And it's finally slowed down. And I thought she was well, but then Travis said that he thought he saw blood in her urine again the other day. So now we got to send it to the lab. And I desperately want to start ordering Herbalife because I go to this stupid protein shake thing store in our town way too much because I'm addicted to these things. So I'm going to start ordering it at home. But to start, it's like it's like you have to join and be a like preferred member and you get points. So the more you order, the cheaper it gets. And I went to order the other day. It was going to be my first order. And it was like, oh, I can't because I have an MRI I have to pay for. And now we have a vet bill coming up that we have to pay for. So, and I'm stuck. I'm still stuck. Hillary, how long has it been that I've been stuck? I've lost track now. I'm between 221 and 224. It's been at least a month. I don't know what I'm doing wrong.
September 2000.
38 pounds.
2017.
And that's it.
Were you a fan of Ashley in May?
I don't remember specifically, but it may have been in
And now the sound is going to screw up
our
again.
text messages from January through June, possibly.
You expressing support for her?
Support for her story of the case, yes, sir.
Yeah. And did you tell her, in fact, at one point, she married the wrong Benefield?
Oh.
That she married the wrong field?
Relevance.
Good Lord. Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen when I go back to my doctor and he's like, why haven't you lost any more weight? I don't know. I'm stuck. And I can't exercise because of my back. So. But those protein shakes are good. I want to do 2 a day and then a small dinner. I think that'll like kickstart me back into losing again. But they're like $10 a shake at the store. So if they're, I think she figured it out. Like if I buy this stuff myself and make them at home, if I were to buy one a day from the store, it would, to make them at home one a day, it would save me like over $200. Although I don't get one at the store every day because I can't afford to get one at the store every day. I wonder if I change it to a different feed, if the sound would be better, because that is driving me crazy. Well, shoot. Are they still at sidebar? I guess they're still at... How come? Law and crime is not at sidebar. I don't know if they're ahead or behind.
Thank you. So, Mr. Benefield, after expressing this benefit 18 months,
Ugh, this is going to aggravate me.
Additional reasons, sir.
do you know the reason Ashley gave your cousin Doug as to what him?
Objection.
It's from,
Well, I'm not going to,
is it being offered for the truth? I mean,
it's not being offered. I'm not going to go into evidence. I just want to know if you can answer. Did Doug share with you the reasons why she left him?
He shared two different reasons.
Yeah, all right. So several following that you're a fan of
that specific text 6 months of open communication.
All right. If I can recollection. Your Honor?
Yes.
That refresh recollection as to whether
It does not say anything about benefit.
does it say
Sir, is that about identifying you? We need to lay.
I believe it is unaltered.
and it's between you and this, and it's accurate, is it not?
I believe so.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Objection.
Benefield.
I'm going to see if I back it up if it'll fix the audio.
Thank you. So, Mr. Benefield, after expressing this benefit
Nope, I don't think it is.
18 months,
Nope. Why is their audio so screwed up?
Additional reasons, sir.
do you know the reason Ashley gave your cousin Doug as to what him?
Objection.
Is from,
Well, I'm not going to,
is it being offered for the truth? I mean,
yeah, it's not being offered. I'm not going to go into evidence. I just want to know if you can answer. Did Doug share with you the reasons why she left him?
He shared 2 different reasons.
Yeah, all right. So several following that you're a fan of her, that she,
Remember that specific text 6 months of open communication.
all right. But I can recollection. Your Honor?
yes.
That refresh recollection as to whether
It does not say anything about benefit.
does it say does the document I've shown you, Mr. Benefield, refresh your recollection of that particular exchange?
Yes, sir.
Now, would you tell us your recollection having been refreshed, whether or not tell us what your response was to Ashley's text.
I think that's better.
This is 6 months, and you want me to just focus on
Just tell us
one
what your
line? Is that what correct,
Benefield,
Mr. Taylor?
Let me see.
just tell us what your response was to Ashley's
Okay, we're gonna have to
text,
back
your
up some.
recollection having been refreshed. Married the wrong Benefield.
I don't remember that specific text in the 6 months of open communication between she and I.
All right. Let me see if I can refresh your recollection, Mr. Benefield.
Objection.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Let me see what you're showing.
Sure. I'm going to show you a document. Why don't you take a moment and look at it and tell us if that refreshes your recollection as to whether or not you suggested to Miss Benefield she'd married the wrong Benefield.
It does not say anything about marrying the wrong Benefield.
Does it say,
Objection.
Hold on. Sir, has that document, without identifying it, we need to lay the predicate.
Mrs. Benefield, is that document reflective of the communication that you shared with Miss Benefield?
I believe it's correct and unaltered.
All right. And it's between you and Miss Benefield, is
Yes,
it
sir.
not?
Yes, sir.
And it's accurate, is it not?
I believe so.
Okay. Now, may I approach?
Yes.
You say thank you,
Objection.
Benefield.
Yeah, approach, Mr. Taylor, please.
Does the document I've shown you, Mr. Benefield, refresh your recollection of that particular exchange?
Yes, sir.
Now, would you tell us, your recollection having been refreshed, whether or not, tell us what your response was to Ashley's text.
This is 6 months, and you want me to just focus on
Just tell us
one
what your,
line? Is that
Mr.
what correct,
Benefield,
Mr. Taylor?
just tell us what your response was to Ashley's text, your recollection having been refreshed.
Ashley says in the text,
Mr. Benefield,
Sustained.
please tell us what your response to Miss Benefield's text was now that your recollection has been refreshed.
there are multiple on the page, sir.
Mr. Benefield, I think you know what
Let
I'm
him
referring to. Would you please answer my question?
I would like to answer it as it pertains to what she said.
I didn't ask you what she said, Mr. Benefield. I asked you to please tell us, your recollection having been refreshed, what you said.
Would you want me to read that
Judge, I
bubble?
object. We do not need to be reading from the document.
Deputy, would you please take the jury into the jury room? If you could give us 5 minutes, I appreciate it. Remember, please don't begin your discussions and deliberations amongst yourselves. You can use your phones if you need to contact people, but don't talk about the case with anyone else, and don't do research on the people, places, things, or legal topics we've heard anything about. All right, you can have a seat. The jury's out. Mr. Benefield, I'm going to excuse you to the hallway. You are not to discuss your testimony or the questions that have been asked of you with anyone, including the attorneys. And you're not to let anybody talk to you about anything that's going on inside the courtroom.
Yes, sir, I will do that. Shall I leave the paper here?
Yes, sir. Leave that there.
Yes, sir.
Okay. When we began this portion of the discussion, the question was, did you tell Ms. Benefield that she married the wrong person?
The wrong Benefield.
The wrong Benefield. And I sustained that as hearsay with no exception. I found that it didn't provide impeachment of any prior inconsistent statement. What I did allow was him to testify as to his then existing mental, physical, or emotional conditions or feelings, with the question being, did you feel that she had married the wrong Benefield? There was then the attempt to use these text messages that I still have not seen. I don't know what the substance of them was, but where we were was my understanding, and what I heard was the defense was attempting to refresh the witness's recollection. And what I have said is it sounded like it started to morph into some mix of impeachment and refreshing recollection and some elements of introducing a past recollection recorded, and that's where we're at. So, state your objection.
My objection, first of all, is the predicate has been laid to refresh recollection. But then the witness has not been asked what his recollection is, other than to read it off of the paper, which is commingling past recollection and either past recorded or something of that nature. I think we're commingling the two different things. And if this witness needs to be asked, if it refreshes his recollection, then he can be asked that question without reading the document. I would object to any reading of the document because it is extrinsic evidence. It's being used for impeachment. I do not believe his state of mind is relevant to a material issue in this case. I think the defense is trying to say that it goes to bias, but I'm not quite sure how that fits into it. So my objection would be it's improper refreshing recollection. It's improper impeachment. It's also improper prior recorded recollection, and I would object to that being testified about.
Your response, sir?
Yes. So as succinctly as I can, Your Honor, he's a creep. He acknowledged being a creep, and the jury will conclude he's a creep. It goes directly to his character and his bias. And that's why, after he said, yes, it was accurate, I recall it, he cannot bring himself to say it. And the reason he can't bring himself to say it is because he knows that all these women on the jury are going to know exactly what he was referring to. So I am trying to impugn his credibility after listening to everything that he had to say to set up the state's position about how this relationship was so lovey-dovey between Miss Benefield and Douglas Benefield, and what a wonderful relationship it was. Here, we now have this witness very begrudgingly admitting that after Miss Benefield leaves Douglas Benefield, and she leaves the letter, which I know the court has seen because I attached it as an earlier exhibit to a motion, he's still supporting her. And he's not only supporting her, but he's telling her she married the wrong Benefield. In my world, Your Honor, based upon the rules of evidence, I am entitled to go after his credibility, which he has put in question by virtue of taking the witness stand and becoming a witness. I did it the way the court wanted. I asked the magic question, does this refresh your recollection? He said it did. Now I want him to tell me, in response to my question, did you tell Miss Benefield she married the wrong Benefield? And he cannot bring himself to acknowledge it. He wants to talk about anything else but that. And I think, Your Honor, anything that I'm capable of showing where this witness, Doug Benefield's loving cousin, Tommy Benefield, where this witness showed his support for Ashley Benefield after she left Douglas Benefield, goes directly to his credibility. You can't get up there and testify to all of these things about how wonderful this relationship was, and then on cross-examination have to acknowledge that you were still saying you're a fan of Miss Benefield's after she leaves him, knowing the reason she left him. I intentionally didn't go into the reasons to try to be straight with the court. But now I'm attempting to impugn his credibility. And he knows it, Judge. He's looking at me like a deer in the headlights.
I'm going to allow you to respond. I previously mentioned about confining arguments to legal and factual bases. I am also going to direct both sides to refrain from vituperative ad hominem attacks. I don't think we need to resort to name calling. I think it's inappropriate and unprofessional to refer to a witness as a creep. All right. With that said, go ahead for your response.
The first thing, Judge,
Okay, I'm gonna flip that.
The defense will give it to you. Nowhere in there does it say she married the wrong Benefield. That is not what it said. First of all. And second of all, Tommy Benefield never said that anything about their relationship and the tenor of their relationship once she left. He said, when I saw them together, they looked fine. Just because that changes down the road and he knows they're having problems, I am unaware of how that affects his credibility. He can clearly see that they're having problems later on down the road. I don't see how the timing being different somehow makes him inconsistent and somehow that attacks his credibility or it shows his bias. If Mr. Taylor wants to ask him, were you aware that there were problems after that? Yes, I was aware of that. I mean, in Mr. Taylor's argument, he is impeaching the fact that second of all, Tommy Benefield never said that anything about their relationship and the tenor of their relationship once she left. He said, when I saw them together, they looked fine. Just because that changes down the road and he knows they're having problems, I am unaware of how that affects his credibility. He can clearly see that they're having problems later on down the road. I don't see how the timing being different somehow makes him inconsistent and somehow that attacks his credibility or it shows his bias. If Mr. Taylor wants to ask him, were you aware that there were problems after that? Yes, I was aware of that. I mean, in Mr. Taylor's argument, he is impeaching the fact that Tommy Benefield saw them acting loving to each other. If that wants to be impeached or explored, then ask Mr. Benefield if he saw them after that or knew that they were not loving and having that type of relationship. I don't understand the relevance of these types of conversations. I think the defense tends to say everything is about bias, but it has to comport with the rules of evidence. And I would say that this does not.
All right. Thank you both very much. So my ruling earlier was that these statements by Mr. Benefield towards the defendant were hearsay. I wasn't aware of any exception that would allow them. They appear to be offered for the truth of the matter that is asserted. So I didn't allow them on that grounds. What I allowed was the defense to ask, because there had been testimony by Tommy Benefield that they were always respectful to each other. He never saw anything except care for each other, and they were in love both ways. I think it is an impeachable question to ask, did you feel that she married the wrong Benefield? But it's not what he wrote. It's what he felt. That's where you're mixing apples and oranges, the defense is. The question that was presented to me was, did you feel that she married the wrong Benefield? He can answer yes or no. If there's then some extrinsic evidence that may impeach him on that point, I would then have to make a determination is that extrinsic evidence admissible or not? Because if it's a collateral matter that's not material, then the as you well know, Mr. Taylor, you get the answer you get. Where we had an additional part of this analysis was the fact that there was a demonstrated lack of memory, because the answer was, I don't know, as opposed to, no, I didn't say that, or yes, I didn't feel that, yes, I did feel that. So then the path was started on was refreshing recollection. As I've mentioned before, and I mentioned pre-trial, I expect attorneys to know the differences between impeachment by a prior inconsistent statement. That's one path. Refreshing recollection is a second path, and introduction of past recollection recorded, which is a separate path. And the reason I'm sustaining the objection is because it started off with refreshing. Does it refresh your memory? And then we got right back into the documents themselves, which I've already ruled were hearsay. So it's for impeachment purposes only. You can ask him about what I allowed you to ask what his feelings were, but not to get into these documents themselves. I don't know how to say it any more clear than that.
So,
If you're refreshing his recollection, then we're going to take that path.
yes, I believe I did that. I believe I refreshed his recollection, and he acknowledged that. So then my question was,
What did you say? And that
Actually-
gets back to the documents. If he says his memory is refreshed, you take the document back, or whatever the thing is that you use to refresh recollection is to be retrieved. And then the person testifies from their own personal knowledge.
once he said that he recalls, I then asked him if he said that you married the wrong Benefield. That's what I said. I will be happy to go through that again, Your Honor. Now, did I leave the document there when I asked him that? Yes. I
Not
didn't feel it was
said.
necessary to take the document back.
Feel.
But after he acknowledged that his memory was refreshed, I asked him, did you say
Open
that
your
she married the
listening
wrong
holes,
Benefield?
dude.
And that's where we were when Your Honor sent the jury out. He was trying to come to terms with how he was going to answer that.
Said. Feel, not said. Feel. Feel. Pay attention. Good Lord.
The other text, Your Honor, is just indicative of continued support for Ms. Benefield.
So this doesn't say what you're asking him.
Thank you, wrong Benefield. Ms. Benefield says, that's very cool. You should be so proud of what you were doing. His response is, thank you, wrong Benefield. What that means, Your Honor, what that suggests is, thank you. You should have been with me.
Sustained.
I assure you, Judge, that any female will draw that conclusion immediately.
That does not match what you're asking, sir. All right, are we ready to bring the jury back in? Do you want to treat this as your mid-morning break? You guys can take 5 minutes.
Can I take 5 minutes, please?
All right, am I going to be allowed to get an answer from him?
I've sustained the objection. All right, so we'll take.
I'm sorry, I just want to clarify your ruling. It's my understanding that you said he could ask how he felt.
Correct. The last objection was the questions were going to, what did you write? What did you say in your text messages? Sustained.
And then, okay, thank you.
So we're clear. Did you feel she married the wrong Benefield?
I've already ruled you could ask that question.
All right.
Okay. We are on a break. 5-minute break. Well, I don't know what to do. I guess you guys just, if anybody is even here, I could be all by myself. I have no idea. But I'm learning and I'm having fun, so it is what it is.
You ready to bring the jury back in? State?
Yes.
Defense? Ready. All right, bring them in.
Perfect timing. Look at that.
Oh, yeah, as you're going to bring them out, go and bring Mr. Benefield back in. State, where's Mr. Benefield?
Oh, I will find them.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't realize.
It took a long time for him to get here earlier too, so we just need our witnesses ready to go.
They did a room for the state attorney's office witnesses down there. Because the press has this room. Rest of the side.
Sorry?
We have several witnesses outside if you want to try to get them thrown out. Judge, that was why, because our witness room is.
All right, Mr. Benefield, come on back in and resume the witness stand. You'll recall that you are under oath. Yes, sir. Sir, as we took that break, did anybody attempt to approach you or speak with you about your testimony, the evidence, or this case? No, sir. Did you speak with anyone about your testimony, the questions asked of you, or the evidence of this case? No, sir. All right. Let's go and bring the jury in. You all go ahead and have a seat. Whenever you find your spots, just sit on down. All right, everyone gonna have a seat. Members of the jury, during that break, did anybody discuss the case amongst yourselves, discuss the case with anybody outside of the jury, or do any research on the people, places, things, or legal topics we've heard anything about? Everybody says no. All right, Mr. Taylor.
Mr. Benefield, when we last were assembled, we were waiting for you to answer the question whether you felt Ashley had married the wrong Benefield.
No, sir, I did not believe that.
Was it a joke?
It was an attempt to keep our communication open between us.
You know, we've established that you were aware that Ashley left Doug in September of 2017.
Yes, sir.
And we've also established that following that, you expressed your support of her.
Yes, sir.
All right, now I want to direct your attention specifically to the month of November of 2017. Were you aware of a domestic violence injunction that Ms. Benefield sought and obtained from South Carolina court?
Yes, sir, at that time.
And did you express to Miss Benefield
You ask the question.
your support of her after she obtained that domestic violence injunction?
Sustained.
Did you support Miss Benefield in November of 2017 following the issuance of a domestic violence injunction?
Not specifically about that, sir.
Do you recall expressing your support on Saturday, November 4th, 2017?
I don't remember that specifically, sir.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Mr. Benefield, I'm going to show you a document, see if this refreshes your recollection. The areas that I checked refresh your recollection?
Yes, sir, those appear to be my statements.
All right, recollection having been refreshed, Mr. Benefield, on November 4th, following the issuance of the domestic violence injunction to Ms. Benefield, did you express your support to her?
There are two problems with your question for me, sir. I'm going to ask you.
Would you answer my question, and then you can certainly feel free to explain it?
I was unaware of I believe I was unaware of any result of any pending case in South Carolina at the time I texted that.
I thought you just told us you were aware.
I became aware after the fact when the mutual protection order was entered. I found out about it after the fact, but I don't remember the date of that event as it relates to the November 4th.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
State, any redirect?
No.
Can this witness be released?
Yes.
Mr. Taylor, can this witness be released from his subpoena?
Yes, sir.
Sir, you are released from your subpoena. The prior restrictions that I placed upon you are removed.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
State, call your next witness.
State calls Ashley Benefield.
I think this is the deceased daughter.
morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
My name is Judge White. I'm presiding over the case. Just make yourself comfortable in that chair. Get about 12 to 15 inches from the microphone. It does adjust up, down, left, and right as you need it. Actually, you're just fine right there. I think that's close enough.
Okay.
Speak in a loud, clear voice, and we'll hear everything. Go ahead.
Please state your name.
Eva Benefield,
How do you spell your first name?
EVA,
And how old are you?
23.
What was your relationship to Doug Benefield?
He was my father.
And who was your mother?
Renee Benefield.
And we heard from the previous witness, she died, unfortunately, at some time before this case, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. When did you first find out about someone named Ashley Benefield?
It was August of 2016, about 9 months after my mom passed.
Okay. And how did you find out about her?
My dad was on the phone when he picked me up from school, and he had his phone on speaker, and they mentioned him having a girlfriend, and if he was going to bring his girlfriend to a conference that they had that weekend.
And was that the first time you had any information that there might have been a girlfriend?
Yes.
Okay. How old were you at the time?
I was 15.
At the time, were you upset with him about that?
No, I just told him that I trusted him, and if that's what made him happy, that I would be happy for him.
And about how long after that did you find out they were married?
It was 2 days after.
And how did you find out that they were married?
My dad came up into my room, and he said, "Eva, we need to have a chat downstairs with Ashley." She was at the house at the time, and I said, I don't think we need to. I understand that you're dating her and you're happy, but please just, give me my space a little bit. I don't want to have a conversation." And he said, "No, I think it's really important we do." And I said, "The only time that I would want to have a conversation with y'all is if you told me that you were going to propose." And when those words came out of my mouth, he told me that they were married.
Okay. So that's how you found out they were married.
Yes.
Did Ashley eventually move into your house?
Yes.
And that was the house in South Carolina?
Yes, ma'am.
At the time, who all lived in the house? Just the three of you?
Yes.
How was their relationship together that you saw?
They were just with each other all the time. It was very lovey-dovey. They were very touchy-feely, PDA. Any event with school or extracurricular that I was in, they were together. They'd go grocery shopping together, go travel together. They never left each other's side.
Okay. And how did you and Ashley get along?
It was friendly at first.
Okay. You said at first.
Yes.
And then what happened?
Over time, she tried to reprimand me a little bit more and kind of step into a motherly role. And I did not like that because it was so short after my mom passed away.
Okay.
Relevance.
Sustained.
And in Ashley's interactions with you, or interactions that she had or disagreements that she had with your father, how did you observe her to act?
Can you repeat the question?
I'm sorry, it wasn't a good question. Whenever she had a disagreement with you, how would she act?
It was almost temper tantrum like. It was
Objection. Impermissible character evidence.
I'm sorry.
Character evidence.
Overruled.
Yeah.
Okay, so it was temper tantrum like, and you didn't sound like you were finished. What were you saying?
she would go directly to my dad and tell him that I wasn't obeying.
Tattle.
Okay. And
She's a tattletale.
did her reactions to you seem to be on the level of the situation, or did she get more angry at the situation?
Usually they were overreactions over small things.
Okay. And how about interactions with your dad? Did you ever hear her argue with your father?
I heard her strongly voice her opinions over and over and over again.
Okay. Now, you said over and over and over again. Is that something that you heard on a regular basis or something you only heard once?
It was on a regular basis.
Okay. And when she was voicing her opinions to your father, was he ever reacting to that?
No, he would just sit quietly and listen.
Did you ever see them fight,
No,
verbally fight?
no,
Okay. Did you ever see them physically fight?
no.
How often would you say that Ashley and your father would disagree within your hearing?
Never.
Okay. You said if Ashley was trying to get her point across that she would go on and on about that?
Yes.
Okay. So you don't term that as a disagreement?
No.
Okay. What would you term that as?
My dad just listened to her voice her concerns.
Okay. Did you ever hear your dad at any time yell at her?
No.
Did you ever hear your dad do something or say something that was controlling to her?
No.
Did you ever see or hear your dad threaten her?
Objection, leading.
Overruled.
Did you ever see or hear your dad threaten her?
No.
Did you ever see or hear your dad get physical with her?
No.
No further questions.
Cross.
Yes. Good morning, Ms. Benefield.
Good morning.
We met previously at a deposition, correct?
Correct.
And I apologize to you for meeting you under these circumstances. I'm required to ask you a few questions based on the testimony that you've given us. You lived in the house at the time that Ashley and your father were first married.
Yes.
And you found out from your father that he had married Ashley when he introduced her to you.
It wasn't when I was first introduced. It was a day after.
So the day after, you said?
Yes.
Okay. So your mother had passed away approximately 8 months earlier,
9 months.
9 months earlier. And your father, with no advance knowledge, came and introduced you to his new wife.
Yes.
There was a hole in the ceiling of the kitchen in your home, correct?
Correct.
You know what that hole was, how it got there?
Objection. Calls for hearsay.
I don't know if it will or not.
I would prefer the question not be asked.
Okay.
Can we approach?
Yes.
So much approaching. So much approaching. So there's a kitchen. There's a hole in the kitchen ceiling, supposedly because they were arguing and he shot a gun in the kitchen ceiling to, I guess, to scare her or to make her stop arguing, is one of the claims. So her knowing why there is a hole in the kitchen would be hearsay because she was not there to witness it. Why they need to approach, I do not know. Because that is hearsay. She looks really nervous. And when he got up to start the cross exam, she looked fearful. This poor, I don't know how old she is. I know she's young, but she's obviously an adult, or they would have her. We wouldn't be watching her testimony. So she's adult. Somebody said she had some TikToks. I don't have TikTok, so I've not seen them, but that she had some TikToks like laying out the timeline of the thing, like telling her story, and that they were really good. Like she has like a morbid sense of humor or dark sense of humor. I do too. Healthcare workers usually do. So you learn that that's a coping skill that healthcare workers develop. Dark sense of humor. Probably law enforcement do too, I would imagine. Anything where any job where you kind of have like life and death in your hands, I think you develop a dark sense of humor to deal with it. So my dark sense of humor has gotten me in trouble more than once too. So if I ever say anything and y'all are like, that wasn't appropriate, that's why. All right, y'all, hurry up. And I am here by myself again. Nice. That's okay. Because now I know how to live stream a trial. It's a nice learning experience. I wonder where all the people yesterday that were saying, yes, Debbie, stream it, do it. I'll see you tomorrow. We'll be there. Where are y'all now? Where are you? Look at her. Poor, poor girl.
So I think the question that was pending, Ms. Benefield, was, did you know how?
Objection, Judge.
Sustained.
Let me back up. You told us there was a hole in the ceiling of your kitchen.
Yes.
Was that hole in the ceiling of your kitchen, can you describe it?
It was small.
Small, kind of round?
Yes.
Consistent with an object?
Objection, speculation.
Let me finish the question.
Consistent with an object the size of a bullet?
Yes.
Overruled.
Were there holes in the drywall of your home?
There was one.
Was it from the closet
No.
outside to the drywall?
No.
All right. Where was
It was near the kitchen.
it? All right. Did you know how it got there?
Yes.
Was the hole consistent with the size of a fist?
Yes.
Was that hole patched?
Eventually.
Who patched it?
My father.
Hey, Allison.
Did you know that your father studied close quarters defense in the Navy?
Yes.
And tell us what close quarters defense comprises.
I'll allow it briefly so she can explain the basis of her knowledge.
Well, let me give the court a little better insight into this. Miss Benefield, do you hold a black belt?
Yes.
Whoa.
And are you trained in defensive combat fighting?
Taekwondo.
Did you and your father often discuss different styles of defensive fighting?
We had the conversations when I was practicing, when I was
Okay.
10.
And tell
I'm going to pause it just for a minute because he talks really slow. So if I speed it up, it'll be fine. This is the daughter of the deceased. His wife died, and 9 months later, he went to some type of political meeting, and he met a woman 30 years younger than him, and they started texting each other. They got married 13 days later. He lived in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina, and he brought this woman home, told his daughter that she was his girlfriend, and then the next day, 13 days. Married 13 days later. After texting, like they'd only seen each other in person twice. So 13 days later, married, told the daughter was his girlfriend, then the next day told her that they were actually married. He had had a vasectomy. She paid to have the vasectomy reversed. She got pregnant like within 2 weeks of the reversal. Then I don't know if he had money because she paid for the vasectomy, but she was a ballerina. So they started a ballet company. They hired 40 dancers and gave them lodging, and it was supposed to be all inclusive, like every body type. Like you can be too big or too tall or too short, like ballerinas are a certain size, but it was going to be all inclusive. So like any size ballerina, if you could be a ballerina, didn't matter what size you were. Well, they ended up, she got pregnant, and I don't know if she just didn't want to do it anymore or they just didn't make a go at it or whatever, but they lost millions of dollars with that venture. She decided that she didn't want to be married anymore, wanted to be a single mom. She came down here to Bradenton where her mom lived, moved in with her, and then he moved down here because of the baby. They're separated. He lived in his own house. And then she said after she had the baby, well, she wouldn't let him see the baby. She claims that he was stalking her and putting trackers on her car and being abusive and poisoning her. She went and got like follicle testing done at the hospital. After the baby was born, she had testing done on the baby. They did like hyperbaric treatments and stuff, even with the baby too, even though there was no sign of poisoning. I mean, like, she's crazy. And she said, I think this happened 3 days before, like a custody hearing. And she said that she was going to move. He was going to move to Maryland. She was going to move too, so they could co-parent. And he was helping her pack to move. And then apparently she says he started being abusive while they were packing. And then she went and got a gun. And it was self-defense that she shot him, but he was shot in the back. So that's the case. And this is his daughter.
us what were you trained in close quarters defense?
Yes.
All right, tell us what it entails.
In hand-to-hand combat.
Okay, and it's the type of hand-to-hand combat where if confronted by a weapon, rather than turning and run, you're trained as to how to remove the weapon from the other person's hands.
Well, you're told to first ask for no conflict, and then if they proceed, yes,
Yeah, in other words, your objective is to take the weapon away.
if there's a weapon involved, yes.
Were you aware that a domestic violence injunction had been issued by the court in South Carolina?
No.
Give me 1 second, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, TPOs aren't hard to get though. I mean, look at Amber Heard. She got one super easy.
One last question, Ms. Benefield. Was your dad fixated with Ashley?
I think they were fixated with each other.
Did you make a prior state? Whoops. Did you express at any time that your dad, your words, not mine, was fixated with Ashley?
I might have.
Prosecution.
Give me just a moment, Judge.
The second witness. It just started today.
Do you remember having your deposition taken?
Yes.
Why do you page in line?
And I was just first asking her the question. Do you remember sitting for a deposition?
Yes.
Let me pass to you this document and see if it refreshes your recollection.
Approach.
And that guy's his first cousin. He was the
The word that you had used to refer to your dad's interest in Ashley was what?
When are you referencing?
In general. Was the word fixated? Was that the word you used?
Yes.
That's all.
Right, redirect.
No, thank you.
All right, can this witness be released?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, but no, so we know. All right, Ms. Benefield, you've not been released from your subpoena, all right? And the rule of sequestration has been invoked. What that means is that you can't be in the courtroom anytime that there's testimony being given or evidence being presented. Because this is being shown on TV or the internet or something, you can't watch it. outside of court. You can't watch what's going on inside of court. You can't be inside of court. You also may not discuss your testimony with any of the witnesses or any of the attorneys. Better practices don't talk about with anybody else. And none of the other witnesses nor the attorneys can talk with you about what's going on in court. Do you understand all of that?
Yes, sir.
All right. And again, you're not released from your subpoenas. You need to remain available.
Okay.
All right. But for now, you're excused. All right, members of the jury, it's right about lunchtime, so let's go ahead and take our lunch break. It's just a couple of minutes before 12. In order to give you time to go and find what you want and everything, I'm going to ask you to be back in that jury assembly room downstairs at about 1:10. All right, so we'll give you about an hour and 10 minutes if you want to go somewhere. Certainly, there's plenty of places. If you haven't been in downtown Bradenton for a while, there's plenty of places up and down Main Street, 12th Street, all the way down to the water. There's some places on 13th, also some places a little bit south. Please leave your notes here. Do not discuss the case with anyone else outside of the jury or amongst yourselves. Please don't do any research on the people, places, things, or legal topics we've heard anything about. Remember also, it's kind of a small town. Sometimes it happens when jurors are sitting in one booth and somebody on the other side of that booth is, you hear talking about the case, or you heard names that sound familiar or things that sound familiar. Remember, I need you to, they may not know you're there. Just, hey, I'm on the jury. I need you to stop.
No, I said the headphones are, she only has the headphones on when they go up to the bench. So I think they're just so she can hear the sidebars. So, okay, I guess I'm going to quit for now since they're going to lunch. And then, like 3 people have shown up. And everybody yesterday, when I said I was thinking of doing this, everybody in the chat was like, do it, Debbie, do it, do it. And only 3 people have shown up. But that's okay, because now I know how to live stream a trial. So, okay, well, thanks for stopping by, Allison. I guess I will talk to you later. This has been fun, though. Let me see, make sure I'm not missing anything.
4 different people, so 2 have testified. Whenever we get back, if there's any particular issues about any folks in the afternoon, let me know.
Okay.
All right.
And we're behind, so I'm not sure exactly when those other people will be coming out. So.
All right. We'll see you guys back here at 1:10.
Thank you. And we anticipate the jury coming back in at 1:15.
Correct. Exactly.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Oh, well. It's a learning experience. At least I'm not embarrassing myself in front of a whole bunch of people. Yeah, it's good. I'm glad you stopped by. At least I wasn't talking to myself anymore. Okie dokie. Have a good day.